People are just not spending enough when it comes to marketing. For some reason, there's a number that when it comes to marketing is $2,000. I don't know why that number came out to be. Over time, what I've seen is more dependency on automations and AI and less dependency on humans. A lot of you are very successful in niches that nobody's ever heard of. If the money to be spent doesn't scare you, I guess you're not spending enough in marketing. Good call to action. If you're not charging $35 or more, you're gonna have a big hurdle that you have to get through. Let's do it to an amazing episode all about profitability, making money.
That dirty word, profitability.
It's a good word.
Why is it that some people do everything they can to limit their profitability as if it were a dirty word?
I wish it was on purpose, but usually it's from lack of clarity about what's going on.
Let's hone in on that and see if we can help people make more money.
Yeah, so let's talk about the problem first. So a lot of people focus on making money, but people are unclear about how much money they're actually keeping at the end of the month. My experience is when I ask for the P&L, number one is it's very hard to get lawyers to give me their P&Ls because they don't have P&Ls. They don't have updated P&Ls. So that's probably key. Let's start off with there is you need monthly profit and loss statements. And usually your accountant, your bookkeeper should provide that for you. So let's actually talk about that. Let's go to number one, which is basically cost management. Cost management, for me, I think, again, comes down to having clarity on your P&Ls. If you have a good P&L made, and what I usually use is QuickBooks online, usually $30 or 60 months, $35 or $65 a month. They actually just increased their price recently for you to have QuickBooks set up. And my accountant, aka bookkeeper, goes in, consolidates, categorizes expenses, does all that. And usually by the first week of the month, I get an updated P&L. So I know with clarity how much is the money that's coming in, where is the money that's coming out, and what's the net. Based on that, then I know how much profitable I am, so I know how much more to spend to be able to make more profits, and then business becomes easy once I have clarity on those numbers. And Neil, what are your suggestions when it comes to cost management?
And that's really important because I remember when I first started working with some cost analysts and they asked me, what's your profit margin? I was embarrassed to say that I couldn't quote them a percentage. I didn't know the answer to that question. And that's one of the reasons why I started with the bookkeeper, because while I could record my expenditures and my income in QuickBooks myself, there are certain nuances of how to categorize things and how you reflect the cost of sales that directly influence your profitability and your profit margin. So first thing I think every attorney needs to do is hire a bookkeeper. And my bookkeeper is virtual. She's online. If you've been with the program for a while, you've heard me talk of Susie Bookkeeping. That's who I work with. And they do the just as you were saying, the hard stuff in the beginning, the nitty-gritty stuff. Then once I incorporated that into my workflow, I was still missing the top-down 40,000-foot view. And that's when I went and hired a fractional CFO. And that fractional CFO and I meet every month, and they take the QuickBooks data and the QuickBooks reports, and they put it into a more global view, more global perspective, and create a dashboard that allows me to see at a glance from that top-down 40,000-foot level. And with that, now I had a very clear understanding of the finances of my law firm, where before that, I basically said, okay, at the end of the month, what's left over? What can I take home? And what can I leave in the firm? And it's basically running your law firm out of your wallet, which is the wrong way to go.
Yeah. And what I found is a lot of people try to cut too early, focus too much on the cutting. Instead, the focus should be on the top end, which is how can I increase the revenue first? That's first. Then once you increase, then you could go back and see where can I cut the fat. Let's talk about budgeting a little bit, Neil, because a lot of people struggle with this. How much money should I be spending on marketing and staff and operations, things like that? So here's my framework. When it comes to marketing, minimum 20% of your top line revenue should be dedicated to marketing. Minimum, even as high as 30% if you're in like a very hyper growth stage. So if you're not spending at least 20% of your top line, then you're probably not investing enough on marketing. That's number one. Number two, probably one of the biggest costs for a law firm is your staff. That always is going to be one of your biggest expenses. Usually 20 to 30% of your budget goes to that. Good. What I try to do is I try to stay as virtual as possible when it comes to staff. Much lower costs, much more effective to manage, much easier to maneuver, and that usually becomes our secret sauce. Virtual as much as possible, and only have very key roles that are in-house if necessary. But if not, 80, 90% virtual. And then the rest, about 20% on operations. Under operations, a lot of people are too stingy when it comes to tools. What I do, my mindset is unlimited budget on tools. And the reason is tools are usually very inexpensive in relation to the output, the benefit that you get from these tools.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if the tool is $100 a month, or even 200 or 300. If you're not getting a good amount of ROI from that, if you're not making at least $1,000 or more, if not like $5,000 or $10,000 a month from these tools, then it probably means you're not using the tool. Either you're not using it or you're not using it effectively. So what I do is I just have a rule of thumb. If I use a tool, it's worth it. If I don't use a tool, it's not worth it. As long as I use it, I don't care how much it is. I'm going to sign up for it. I'm going to use it, leverage it, have my team leverage it as much as possible, and just leverage as much tools as possible, because that's where I'm going to get the highest ROI out of any expense in my law firm.
Last week, we talked about go all in and focus on one platform. For instance, don't try and dabble across multiple platforms. I feel the same way about tools, not in the sense of limiting my budget on tools, but go all in maximizing the effectiveness of the tool. I can't tell you how many law firms that I see that use a platform or a tool and only use 20%, if that, of its capabilities. I mean, a good example is we all use word processing applications on our laptops, our desktops, and what have you. And I'd venture to say that for most attorneys and most law firms, operational personnel, they're not using those tools to maximum effectiveness because they don't understand all the features that can save them time. And every time you save time, you're making money. So you can get to a point where the tools replace actual hands-on work that people are doing. And that's really what you want. You want to go with level of automation that generates time, saves time, and generates money for you.
Totally. And over time, what I've seen is more dependency on automations and AI and less dependency on humans. Humans are expensive, it's hard to manage. Sometimes they complain and a bunch of other factors. However, automations and AI do what they do. They're robots. They do what they're told without complaining back. So over time, seeing this trend, more automations, more AI, less humans, you want to lean towards those kinds of resources.
And that all comes under the understanding of managing your costs, really. But the other flip side of that is pricing strategies. That's our second point, Sam, pricing strategies. And I know you have a lot of insight into this because you have the luxury of being able to look at pricing strategies across a broad spectrum of law firms, both that you own and that are working with you in Lawyers Club and My Legal Academy. So talk to us a little bit about your views on pricing strategies.
Yeah, there's a lot to be discussed here. So let's try to dig a little deep. So there's two types of pricing. Well, there's for transactional, and then there's the contingency lawyers. So let's talk about the transactional lawyers. What I've seen is people are not charging enough for their services. What I've seen is you need to have a bottom end cutoff of a certain amount or more that you should be charging per client. And if you're not, that means you haven't formulated your offer in an optimized way for you to charge however much you need to be able to scale your law firm. Let me simplify this for you. You need to be charging at least $3,500 or more for a transactional service. Why do I say $3,500? Because it costs money to generate clients these days. In marketing these days, it's going to cost anywhere minimum $300 to at least $1,000 or sometimes even more for you to generate clients online these days. So if your service is, let's just say $1,000 or $500, well, how are you going to make money? Because it's going to cost you $300 to at least to $1,000. So it really doesn't scale. You don't go anywhere. You don't grow unless if you're charging $3,500 or more, that I've seen is like a good area to be in. That way you comfortably spend $500 or $1,000 to be able to acquire a client and also have enough left over for your operations and your team, all that stuff, for you to have enough of a profit margin for you to be able to take that profit margin, feed it back into the business to go generate more clients, and then from there grow and scale from there. So good call to action. If you're not charging $3,500 or more, you're gonna have a big hurdle that you have to get through. For that, we could dedicate a whole episode about how to create your offer. Essentially, it comes down to offer creation. I have a bunch of notes about this. This is something that I got obsessed with back in the day because I knew one of the biggest levers that I had to growing was just to play around with the offer, make it more comprehensive, create some urgency in it. Let's try to solve as many problems as I can. Offer the upsells in there. Don't offer processing fees. These are little levers that you can put to optimize your offer. But that's a good place to start, is have a $3,500 offer or more.
One of the things that one of my early mentors told me that really stuck with me, they insisted that you raise your fee for your transaction, because it was all transactional based. Raise that fee for every category of transaction that you have every year, if not every 6 months, and keep raising it regardless until you got ample pushback that you were too expensive for those clients. And then you can drop it back a little bit if you so choose. But then you maximize your value-based pricing.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, also make a mistake if they put the pricing on the website or in their ads. That's a mistake because it automatically disqualifies a lot of your prospects based on that. And then now you start playing that game. It's more of a transactional game. Then you start getting more of those people. You attract those types of people who are looking to cut down and negotiate with you. Versus don't share that conversation. May bring people into the conversation, address their problems, have a good sales conversation with good questions. And then the offer is you lean towards the value that you solve for them. And then the sales becomes much easier. Again, there's a lot more to it. There's tons of books about this. Offer creation. Russell Brunson was a co-founder of ClickFunnels, talks about this all the time. But there's a lot of room for growth just by refining your offer and your pricing. All right, let's go to number 3. Again, the secret to law firm profitability is investing enough in lead generation. What I've seen, Neil, is people are just not spending enough when it comes to marketing. For some reason, there's a number that's always a lot of people do. And when it comes to marketing, it's $2,000. I don't know why that number, how that number came out to be. I guess $1,000 is probably a little too much. So a lot of people just come up with a nice round number. How much money do you spend on marketing? $2,000. I'm like, as soon as I hear it, I'm like, I'm so sorry, because that doesn't scale. Again, that may have worked 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but these days, spending $2,000 in marketing, whether it be on Google LSA or Google Ads or Facebook or whatever, unfortunately, it doesn't get you any result that you want. And then you run it, you're like, it doesn't work. Then you give up on it. Then you never come back to it. And then now you're like struggling. So my rule of thumb is minimum, you need to spend at least one client worth on marketing. What that means is it comes down to how much money do you make off a client, off one client, lifetime customer value, CLV. Okay. What is your CLV for you? That's exactly the number that you should spend in marketing per source. If you're not willing to spend that much, then you probably shouldn't do it in the first place. And maybe you should save up some money until you can. But don't do it for less than that, because these days the market is very saturated. If you're competing with people who are spending tens of thousands of dollars, you coming here with your $2,000 budget is not going to get you anywhere.
I remember when you first told me this, Sam, several years ago, and I thought, this guy is crazy. I'm struggling here spending $500 a month in Facebook ads and not getting the results I wanted. He wants me to spend $3,500 to acquire clients. And it was when, moment of clarity, Sam, you said to me, well, what's your lifetime value? And $3,500. So if you get one client, you've paid for that month's worth of ads. Well, yeah, sure. Well, how many clients are you getting now from your $500 a month? Well, none. Okay, well, it was a self-evident problem. And so when I bit the bullet and said, okay, I got to figure out some way to come up with this money in order to start generating new leads, that's when things started to happen for me. So live testimony to that fact.
Yeah. And a lot of people also have to spend money on the media buyers. Let's just say if you're typical rate for a media buyer these days is $2,000 constantly, same number. So if you're paying $2,000, you need to be spending at least 2-3 times more than that on your budget, on your marketing budget for the ROI to make sense. What I mean by that is if you're spending $2,000 in your media buyer management and you're only spending $2,000 in your ad budget, unfortunately, you're not going to get the result that you need to make this $4,000 profitable. So if you are going to do it, just make sure that it's at least 3 times more than the marketing budget. So also, what I've noticed is people are overpaying media buyers. Our program is done with you. So we try to get you to not become dependent on a media buyer. We try to make sure that how this works. And we try to give you the control of doing this yourself. Nobody cares as much as you. With a little bit of coaching, with a little bit of resources that we provide you. And actually, Neil, what we're going to be doing going forward is we're going to create all the ads for people who join our program. So no more dependency of like, just give you, like we give you the recipe of like, these are the type of ads that are working. No, we're actually going to give the ads to our lawyers, to our members. And we're going to do this on a consistent monthly basis. Be like, hey, this is what's working right now. Take this and run with it for each practice type. If you're a family lawyer, just literally put up this ad because it's working out well.
Yeah.
But yeah, just have that in mind. Then the math matters. The math is matters. For me, as I shared this, the amount that I spend in marketing, it's beyond my imagination. Never, ever imagined a couple of years ago that I'd be spending close to $1 million a month in ads, coming from somebody who would barely spend $500 a month in ads. So if the money amount you spend doesn't scare you, I guess you're not spending enough in marketing.
I like that message.
Number 4 is the riches in the niches. Neil, this is all you. Let's go. Neil, how do you feel about the riches is in the niches? Do you think this is worthwhile these days?
Well, I think I mentioned, it might have been last week or maybe earlier today, I forget. Again, I hate to point this out. I've made all the mistakes that you can possibly make in running a law firm. The key is to learn from those mistakes. I felt like when I first started practicing that I had to have a really broad geographical area that I could focus on. And what led me to, because I was a techie, I felt like I had the technical resources that would allow me to service a really large geographical area. And therefore, I'd have a much larger pool of potential clients to draw from, and I would be much more profitable in the long run. Well, in truth of fact, the opposite was true. When I started to have success is when I niched down to a very small local geographic area. I said, if I can't be the king of Darnestown, how am I going to be the king of Montgomery County? So I got to start with my own local community. And what that allowed me to do was really focus in on the needs of my local community and really be able to focus not only my attention to serving those needs, but also it then just drove my marketing to that same segment and the opportunities there. Things like supporting the local elementary school or supporting the local swim team. I think you see up here and on my shelf right there is a picture of the swim team that my law firm supports. And it's tremendous marketing at the grassroots level. And I started really to build my practice when I focused in on that geographical niche. Now, it doesn't have to be geography that you focus in on, could be your practice area, okay? Again, I do estate planning. There's a wide range of clients that you can provide estate planning services to. I tried to focus down on one particular area, and it drives my marketing approach. I do estate plans for regular folks like you and me. That helps guide my marketing focus. So I think, I don't know where that riches is in the niches came from. I've been hearing it for many, many years. To me, it can't be more true.
Yeah. So for me, it's all about the blue ocean. If you're swimming the red ocean, then it's going to be a uphill battle. Versus if you're in a niche, you're essentially your own competitor. So that, for me, niching down, it comes down to 2 strategies. Number 1, well, we got a cool little effect right there. And number 1 is focusing on a practice type that really not that many people are focusing. What I found is a lot of people are very successful in niches that nobody's ever heard of. One of our many resources that we have inside of Lawyer Club is what I called a comprehensive legal practice type list. Probably the longest of its kind that's ever been made. I'm looking at it right now. There's 73 different practice types. Probably most of these people are not really focusing on. This resource opens you up to like other niches that are probably a lot easier, not only to serve the clients, but also to set up the clients. And again, be more open-minded to adding on these practice types or focusing on these practice types and swimming in the blue ocean. That's number 1. Number two, if you happen to be in a typical practice type, like the immigration, the family law, the bankruptcy, whoever, these days, as Neil mentioned, you need to niche down on the who. Who do you serve? A lot of people focus on the what too much because it's the typical traditional way of thinking about things. But again, focus on the who. Who you serve when it comes to your market is how you niche down. Estate planning for moms, estate planning for people in the army or whatever, for veterans. That's how you niche down. Or personal injury for Korean speakers or Spanish market, things like that. I've seen a lot of people that are super uber successful just because that one thing. They just happen to be in personal injury for the Korean market. That was it. That was the only reason why they're successful. Besides,
I knew a personal injury. I knew a personal injury lawyer who only took motorcycle cases. I knew another one who only took bicycle cases.
There you go. And
you would think, are there enough of those to sustain that lawyer? Well, he got all the motorcycle cases and he got all the bicycle cases.
And there's a lot of good benefits there. One is it basically simplifies your messaging. It's targeted, it's specific. Well, guess what? When it's clear and specific, it's going to increase your conversion rates because the motorcycle driver who just recently had a motorcycle accident, they'd rather hire a motorcycle lawyer than just a personal injury lawyer. So that's number one. Number two, you're able to systematize your backend a lot simpler, right? If it's the same exact demand for the most part, you're able to systemize that and get that going. Number three, it builds up your expertise. So now you can find little angles in your niche, stay on top of the trends and the league, all the rules and things like that change because you have that clarity and focus. Number four, you have a better chance of increasing your profit margins because again, you're able to systematize your expenses, you're able to increase your revenue on the front end. All good stuff comes from honing in on exactly who you serve, making all your messaging on your website, funnels, emails, texts, everything, all about that. Ignoring the rest. Don't if you happen to serve those other clients, great, do that, but make sure to at least get your targeted messaging down on your funnels and your websites.
Yeah. One of the things that he discovered, this one attorney that I know, was that it also opened up referral sources for him in a way that he hadn't anticipated, because now all the motorcycle dealers were referring him out. Hey, by the way, you can buy the motorcycle. I have a great time with it. In the offhand chance that something bad happens, here's your guy.
I love that. And I see that all the time too, Neil.
Yeah.
All right. Number 5 is diversifying revenue streams. All right. So that comes down to adding new practice types, adding new revenue sources, and side gigs. However, we feel different about every single one of these that we just talked about. So let's go through it. Neil.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if this is a good or a bad thing, this diversifying revenue streams.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people have the wrong strategy when it comes to this, or they try to diversify way too early. So a lot of people who join our program have those conditions. Hey, Sam, I would like to apply this to this practice type. Can I do that? I'm like, wait a minute. Before we get to there, what are you doing with your own? Well, they shared with me like one practice story just a couple of weeks ago. At this conversation, a lawyer joined our program, doing really well when it comes to criminal defense. I think it was making, I don't know, $300,000, $400,000 a month in criminal defense. And he's looking to scale up personal injury. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you running ads on Facebook for criminal? It's like, I'm not. Okay, well, low hanging fruit right there. Let's try to take this $300,000 a month that you're making in criminal defense. Let's double it with just Facebook ads, adding any other client source. Let's turn that to $600,000 a month. Let's also hire a couple of VAs for your front end and your middle part of your operations when it comes to criminal defense. Let's systematize that even more. Let's set up the CRM. So all these things, so we could systematize and scale your criminal defense before we even consider personal injury. Let's do that for the first 3 months. Once we get there, then yes, by all means, let's go apply the same exact method and same systems for personal injury.
Yeah, I agree. What I've seen is people, they diversify too quickly and without giving it much thought as to whether or not it's a related practice area. I'd much prefer folks to, if they're going to expand into a practice area that has some relation to their primary area. Otherwise, you're running 2 separate law firms under one umbrella, right? And they may not have the same clientele. They may not have the same approach. So I tend to like to see either focusing exclusively on one area, or if you're going to diversify and add another revenue stream, have it be something that complements what you're currently doing. So, for
Yeah.
instance, for me, I do estate planning, but I also do guardianship. It's a different area, it's a different approach. It's more family oriented than estate planning oriented. But there's a lot of folks who, for whatever reason, have to establish a guardianship because, when in fact, the person didn't take care of their estate plan when they had the opportunity to, and now their only resources is to establish a guardianship. So that's a practice area that complements what I do rather than be completely different.
I love that, Neil. It's a great strategy. Is pretty much leverage what you already know about your practice type and then niching in on a subset of that and creating content and running ads for that niche and seeing where it goes. And for me, it's like about incubating new ideas, doing a good amount of research upfront, Google Trends and Google Keyword Planner to do some keyword research to see if there's a market there. Are people searching for it? If I see there's some stuff there, then the second mindset is competition analysis. Who's doing it? What they're doing? Are they good? Are they not? Third is analyzing what's the opportunity, what's the revenue opportunity based on how many clients are seeking for it or they're looking to hire a lawyer for this. How much can I possibly, what's the value of those times the number of people that might be setting up for it. So I could see what the potential is. And then fourth is the infrastructure. What will it take to be able to make this happen? Well, what marketing source am I going to focus on to be able to make that happen? What intakers and people, virtual people that I need to be able to do that? What's the cost of the CRM and all that stuff? And then fifth is who in my team can manage this. This is a mindset that I try to go through for expanding to new areas, very systematic way. Again, planning it out, see if it makes sense. If the opportunity makes sense, then getting a manager, a director that could follow up, that could basically stick with the regimen that I have to say, hey, let's go expand to this. At that point, number 6 will be creating the campaigns and launching some ads to see whether there's interest there. And as soon as we get some interest, great. At that point, the 7 is scale, which is spend more to make more.
Sounds good to me.
The other thing, Neil, that we want to talk about is side gigs, the role of side gigs. How do you feel about side gigs?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of side gigs. I knew an attorney who was a family law attorney, and there's a lot of issues with respect to real estate in family law. So they decided they wanted to also be the real estate agent and be able to do the real estate transactions on behalf of their family law practice. And what they ended up having was two terrible business models, and made sense in their mind, the connection, but the side gig took away from the family law practice that they had, and they've not really caught up. And I think you can see that in a lot of different areas, a lot of different practice areas. People have a side gig they think is going to maximize or develop another revenue stream, and all it does is dilute the product that they're really responsible for generating. Say that it might be worth your while to explore is if you're doing something purely for your pleasure that gives you joy, but also allows you to, in a coherent way, market your law firm, well, then that side gig might be useful. Okay. Same thing as if you're doing something purely as a community benefit. Okay. You want to give something back to the community. And so you're going to learn a little bit about bankruptcy avoidance, for instance. And you want to do that not necessarily to create a revenue stream, but to give something back to the community. Then I can see where that has some applicability. But if you start letting the side gig tail wag your dog, I think that's when you're gonna have a challenge.
Stick to your main gig. Will get you much further in life. All right, so let's do a quick little recap. Is the secrets to law firm profitability is get a good grasp of your cost management. A good P&L, an updated P&L will be really helpful. And also being very clear with your budgeting, being very clear with how much money are you willing to spend to be able to grow when it comes to marketing, your staff, your operations, and your tools. Number 2, make sure that you're optimizing your pricing strategies. We talked up a lot about increasing your value-based pricing, increasing the value and revising your offer to match that. Number 3, invest more into lead generation. Try to invest at least one client's worth per marketing source on your marketing. Number 4, the riches is in the niches. Focus on the who. Even in your own practice type, ask yourself, who are the top people that I'm serving? How can I refine my messaging towards those people? If so, go change your funnels or your websites, your ads to address those who's. And number 5, be careful when you're diversifying revenue streams. Look to incubate new practice areas, but don't fall into the trap of side gigs. It's much easier to scale what you already have than go start a new practice type. Neil, this has been an amazing episode. Please, if you're still listening to this conversation, please take a moment to review this podcast, and please share this podcast with one person that you think will find this episode to be helpful. You will add value to their life. They will appreciate it, and that will lead to positivity that hopefully will continue to go from there.
And don't forget to check out Join Lawyers Club, as well as My Legal Academy. There's $1 million worth of resources available in the Lawyers Club for you just to take a look at and sample. And you'll see all the expertise that Sam has developed over the course of years, and it directly relates to exactly what we're talking about here today.
And Neil, I feel very confident our program is literally one of the highest ROI investments you can make, bar none. Pretty much money back guarantee. So if you haven't already, just go to mylegalacademy.com, book a call to speak to us. It's a free conversation, so we can tell you exactly how we can help you grow your law firm and help you reclaim your time. Appreciate you. We'll see you in the next episode.
Take care, Sam.